Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Total Fitness Friday. And today's routine, the Zoom. It's the great divider, this one. I think I've ever heard of all the ones we do. This is people either say, oh, I love this one, I hate this one. It's one of them. There's a lot of calisthenic elements, more or less body weight. There's a couple of them where we use some light hand weights. But that's it really. You can certainly get away with doing this without anything at all. It's basically based around lots of animal movements, so every exercise you do is an exercise been named after an animal basically, which tends to be the movements that test the body's mobility quite a lot. So that's what it will depend on. Mobility, particularly around the hips and shoulders. And as that gets better, the more you'll enjoy this. If your mobility isn't brilliant, even if your strength and fitness is good, you tend to dislike this routine. It's one of them. Anyway, give it a try, see what you think. Let's get warmed up, and I'll go through the details. Okay.
keeps the silly game we play. Now look at this. And it's magnet keeps attracting me. I try to see your numbers. I think most of should finish last. Stress in my mind, right? I'm for peace, but see, I don't attain. What even keeps this every game we play? Now look at this. And this magnet keeps attracting me. I try to see I'm not the best. I think cross the street, finish last.
Very simple template. It's 30-second work, 10 seconds rest. Each circuit you do lots of quick changes, so it's quite good. It keeps you on your toes. You've got 3 animal-based exercises. Okay, you do each one 3 times, 30 seconds on, 10 seconds rest. Brief rest, move to the next one. There's some really tough ones thrown in there. There's some easier that allow you to get your breath back. It's a real mix, and also, like I said at the start, it really depends on how your body moves. If you're tight around the hips, you'll find certain movements much more difficult than other ones. You know, maybe you're tight around the shoulders. It all depends on the individual, really. So, I'll explain each one as we go. Okay, so they're all animal-based ones. They're all coming 3. So your first 3, we have the crane, the gecko, and the gorilla. Okay? So dumbbells for the first one if you want to. Okay? This is really, again, this is hip mobility and shoulder mobility. It's a good one to warm up. It's going to open up the front of the body nicely. It's as much a stretch as anything else. So you're going to hold your dumbbells nice and high here. And then you're going to go into the deepest lunge you can. You're right back. Okay? And then back in. So from the side, you look in there. Step back as far as you can. Really opening up the front. Okay? And then back. Step right back. Nice and deep. Okay? And that's your crane. That's the first one. Okay, second one is your gecko. So you're just going to come into this prone position. Okay, you're going to bring that knee right into the side here and then back. Okay, into the side, into the side. Slow and controlled there. It's not like a mountain climb, no, you're in that fast. You're really working on squeezing the obliques. And the last one is your gorilla squat thrust. So on your knuckles, give you that bit of height, or you can even use your dumbbell. It actually will make it slightly easier, because the higher you are, the easier it is to do this. So you're bringing your feet in, ideally to the side like that. It's much more difficult than it looks. Again, hip mobility is massively important there. So if you can't quite get that, just get as close as you can. Okay, so even if you're getting there, and eventually you can build it up so you can get your feet right by the side of your hands. Okay, it's quite deceiving that one. So there's your first 3. Let's give them a go. 30 seconds on each. So literally 3 rounds, brief rest, move on. Okay, we go there. Come on, get those and gorillas. Final two.
It's getting closer every day with you around. Moments will pass and fade away. See it now, and nothing holds us back. We will survive. And when there's no one left, you're still by my side. 'Cause you and I can touch the sky. Don't be afraid of the hard time. We had to fall to end it all. Now I know dreams will come alive. Dreams will come alive.
We're going to three press. I'll show you the next three. Right. The duck, the worm, and the cobra. The duck, the worm, the cobra. So, the duck, you all know this one well. Again, very much mobility dependent, particularly the hips. You've got to sit into that deep squat. Knees go out and out. And back way out, that way. Sit into the gap, and then you're just doing a little walk wherever you fancy. Round, forward, back, whatever it is. Okay, just try and last for 30 seconds. Worst comes to worst. When you hit that point, just hold it even in that deep squat position. It's not easy. Remember, try and keep your head and chest high. It's going to be a proud duck, not a depressed, suicidal duck. Okay? Then you've got inchworm. Now inchworm is different. So you've got your hand walks. We're trying to keep, this is mobility down the posterior chain now. A little bend, going down. I'll walk out as far as I can, almost trying to get my face to the floor. And then back. Okay, so a little bend. Walk out as far as you can before you, at that point you don't have the face plant, obviously. You go as far as you can. So almost like a straight line and then back. Okay, keeping that bend in your leg minimum. Cobra raise is all about the posterior chain. This is mobility in the spine. Somewhere where I suffer. This isn't great for me, this is tough. Because my thoracic mobility is really poor. So lying face down. And there. Just going to raise and lower. Raise and lower. And that's it. I've got really bad range there. Okay, somebody might be much better. You might get a really big lift. Okay? That's down to the individual. But I would take a breath in as you raise, because that lungful of air will help you raise. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay? Imagine you're trying to lift your face away from the floor as far as it will go and back. Okay? Right. The truck, the worm, and the cobra. Ready then? Let's kick off making the truck. 3, 2. in the zoo, we have the scorpion, the seal, and the crab. The scorpion, the seal, and the crab. Right, scorpion burpees, seal jacks, and the crab either walking or still. I'll show you all three now. Okay, so. Scorpion burpee. Extreme version. So down on one leg, that leg comes over like a scorpion's tail up. Switch as you do the leg. And there. Okay, the less extreme version. Go down to your burpee, but before you come up, just bring that leg up and over, then back. Okay, there. Up and over. Back. Okay. Then you've got the seal jacks, dumbbells again. Okay. So, arms about 90 degrees. Then you're going to pull. Okay, not a lateral raise. Pull. More like a prone fly, but upright. Okay, so it's there. And as you do it, okay, legs come out. Yeah. Pulling out. Pull. Okay, in. The last one is crab. So, arms that way, feet not that way. There. Lift. Create that sort of tabletop if you can. You may look a little bit more like this if you've got tight hips. Again, keep mobility coming into the wall. Squeeze the glutes. And a little walk back and forth. Just a couple of feet. But if any issues with that, just hold it. Okay? Right.
You took me inside.
Right then. Got 2 left to do. Next, the bear, the frog, and the starfish. Bear crawl. Okay? Again, it's a moving one. But you only need to move a couple of feet. So, plant your toes, lift your knees, and inch off the floor. Now look at my back. That's what you want. Imagine you've got a tray of fine china on your back. Okay? You don't want to spill the tray. So there's my fine china, look. And I can walk and more or less it stays there, look nice and straight. What I'm not doing is it. Okay? Because there's my chance to go there. Keep your knees low. Okay? Your knees need to remain like an inch off the floor. Okay? Number 2, the frog. Almost like a plyo hinge, imagine a plyo deadlift, rather than a plyo squat. Because you're reaching down much lower. Okay, so you've got to lean forward to get your flippers on the floor, yeah? To there, and up, flippers down, up, flippers down, okay? So the depth is important there, if you can get that far. If not, as low as you can. Keep your gaze sort of, if you're at home, sort of skirting board level. You're not too high, not like this, there, and not like that. So you'll tend to then drop too low and get too high. Okay, last one. So we've got the star hold, so pretty much like the hollow body, except your arm like this makes it even harder. So, remember this sequence. Upper body squeeze. Lift your head and shoulders up. Okay, then squeeze your glutes. Finally, lift your feet up. And hold that position. Okay? If you find it too tough, just do it with bent knees. Okay, it is tough. Again, it's hard. So, those 3, get them done. Stop it! salmon, the bat, and the butterfly. Okay, so this is the hardest of rounds. Okay. So the salmon, yeah, swimming upstream, diving out, okay, well that's the salmon push-ups. But obviously, there are many ways you can adapt this. So, most people, well done. So there you go, going on holiday, you're not sliding. Okay, so, push up, and then just a little walk forward, push up, or backward, push up. You can drop to the knees, slap it, up. Okay, just get up and walk for the, okay? If you're more advanced, you can do that version. Okay, if you do that, or any version of that, make sure you land soft. You absorb the impact of the jump. If you're landing hard, but usually that comes after, you'll know you can do that. Because you need some first faster to your hand leaving the floor, so even that, you're just landing softly. Anyway, a version of that. Now the bat is getting yourself upside down, okay? So, handstands, if you want to do them on this wall, there's obviously at home you do it like, if you stay below this, excuse me 1 second, you can keep your feet on, keep your feet on, definitely keep your feet on, keep your shoes up if you're there, push the hips up, create that stack, okay, you don't need to take your shoes off, or if you want to do the full whack, just take your shoes off, you could do the whole lot without your shoes I guess, okay, and on that wall obviously, if you do that wall you have to take your shoes off, sorry. Or you can just do like a pike, like a downward dog in yoga, actually to get yourself forward, really get on your tiptoes and really push your chest through. You're already, again, you're trying to get that upside down, that stack. That's the key to the handstand, stacking your shoulders. Which is better if you're up against the wall doing it, with your chest to the wall. That's why you're better off doing it like a 90-degree angle, keeping your feet low and pushing your hips up. Because that's more reflective than doing this. So if you're doing this, it's not really going to get you good at doing handstand because you're in the wrong position with your shoulders. Okay, so it's much better to put your feet lower. Okay? And then when you're practicing this version, just one foot up first. Okay, so I see some people doing that version of both feet together, which is much harder, obviously. Anyway, you do your version. Then the butterfly, feet together, knees out, hands at temples, and then like a flapping butterfly, feel this way. Okay? That's what you're trying to do. It takes your hip flexors out of the equation. Alright then, so salmon, bat and butterfly. Your version, because they are all three really, are very extreme. This is kind of like this workout version of a finisher. Right, let's do it then, okay?
Like a wave I'll be alright. 'Cause you light up the spark in my eyes like a little dream. Would you be here tonight? Kiss my mouth with your poison. Would you be my nicotine? Would you be my nicotine? Would you be my breathing hard? 'Cause I'm tired and I can't take the taste. Bleeding out now, you know that I hate. 'Cause you light up my heart, light up the spark in my eyes like a little dream. Would you be here tonight? Kiss my mouth with your poison. Would you be my nicotine? Would you be my nicotine?
Oh, last push. 20 seconds. Come on. Last 10. There you go. The Zoom done. Did you love it or hate it? That's the question. The better you get, the more mobile you get, the easier it becomes. Honestly, I know it's not nice now when you're perhaps not quite as mobile as you should be, but it does get easier and more enjoyable. Talking of mobility, we're coming right up now with total mobility. In just a second, half an hour, keep switching. See you for that. Or we're back with kettlebells on Monday. I'm not here tomorrow, so no live. Iron Ryan's coming in the gym there. So I'll see you at home on Monday with wedding bells, get your kettlebells back out. See you for that. Have a great weekend.